A silent eulogy, spoken in footsteps, measured in miles, and in the many hours spent waiting in the cold. Filing into Westminster Hall and past her coffin all through the night, these people have waited hours to pay their respects. Among the crowd, the former Prime Minister Theresa May, who held audiences with the late monarch each week when in power. Confidants through political turmoil, today in the quiet of this, Parliament's oldest building. Its walls built 900 years ago. On top of the catafalque, the imperial crown and a wreath of flowers picked from the Queen's homes in Windsor and Balmoral, where she died. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace and Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack took their turn to stand vigil, both of them members of the Sovereign's bodyguard in Scotland, as well as Liz Truss's cabinet. The royal standard is no longer flying above Buckingham Palace. Its new monarch, King Charles III, having returned home to Gloucestershire, where he'll be taking private calls from world leaders, a break from the ceremonial duties of the last week. Today in Sandringham, the new Prince and Princess of Wales were greeted by thousands of well-wishers. So too Princess Anne in Glasgow and the Earl and Countess of Wessex in Manchester. Yesterday, the late Queen was brought from Buckingham Palace in a ceremonial procession, members of the royal family filing solemnly behind her. Tomorrow at 7:30 p.m, the King and his three siblings will return to Westminster to spend 15 minutes standing vigil over the coffin. It's a tradition that was invented after the death of George V, when the Queen was just 9 years old. And then on Monday, they'll follow the coffin once again as it's escorted to Westminster Abbey for the funeral. More than 300,000 are expected to pay tribute before then.
She just united the nation in such a beautiful way.
And I think this has, actually.
My dad was in the Grenadiers. He's passed away now, but he was in the 2nd Battalion, Grenadier Guards. He looked after the Queen and protected her, and I just felt that it was something I needed to do.
I feel sad that she won't be around for long anymore, actually, because I thought the Queen would be here forever.
I think we've just come here to say thank you, really.
Yeah, that was the main thing. We just wanted to say thanks to her.
At 6:30 a.m. on Monday, the last member of the public will be ushered into Westminster Hall to give a personal farewell to the world's most public figure. Well, as you heard there, the crowds that you see behind me will be gone by Monday morning, and today we've had more information from Buckingham Palace about the choreography of Monday's state funeral at Westminster Abbey. Now, we're expecting around 2,000 people to attend, royals from here and abroad, presidents, heads of state, religious leaders, charities. It'll all start at 11 a.m. It'll be presided over by the Dean of Westminster, but we'll also hear a sermon from the Archbishop of Canterbury. We'll hear too from the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. And this is a major television event. Hundreds of millions of people around the world will be tuning in. It'll end towards midday. Just before that, the last post will sound. There'll be a 2-minute silence observed in the Abbey, but also across the country. And after that, we'll have a procession, very much like the one that we saw yesterday. The coffin will be taken to Wellington Arch on Hyde Park Corner, transferred to the State Hearse, and then driven to Windsor. Once in Windsor, there'll be another service called committal ceremony at 4 p.m. It's at this one that we'll see the crown jeweller removing the orb and the sceptre and the really symbolic imperial crown from the coffin. And then in the evening, finally, there'll be a private service just for the family. And it's at this that the Queen will be laid to rest alongside her late husband of 73 years, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Amelia, thanks very much. Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury crossed the bridge to Westminster this morning to greet some of the mourners as they waited to see the Queen lying in state, along with the head of Britain's Roman Catholics, Cardinal Vincent Nichols, and other faith leaders. I caught up with the Archbishop and the Cardinal, and I began by asking Justin Welby for his reaction when he saw that queue stretching so many miles along the Thames.
I think it's one of the most moving parts of this week. There are people, in one sense, the people here stand for all those in the country who would like to be here and can't be. And I've been out with the queues. They've come from all over the place. There's one from California.
Is it a testimony to the affection that people feel or felt for the Queen? Or is it also something about the magic and mystery of the monarchy?
I think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both in saying this was someone we recognise as someone who practiced servant leadership in a way that we don't always see around the world or with politicians or whatever, not always, sometimes. But I think it was also a sense of deep affection for the stability that she represented and gave us.
And you, clearly, the first state funeral since Winston Churchill, a massive responsibility for you personally. Is that keeping you awake at night, worrying about that responsibility?
No. It's something we've thought about a lot in the first place, but most importantly, it's done in the strength of God, trusting in God, who gives grace and strength.
But you've rehearsed your part in that.
I know what I'm expected to do. Actually, the main burden falls on the wonderful Dean of Westminster. And so I'd say, and on the royal family. And I would say to everyone who sees this, pray for the royal family. How many of us could cope with going from, with having to deal with the loss of someone so close to us and the taking on of these enormous public responsibilities at exactly the same time?
Just finally, you've talked about the continuity of the Constitution. Do you think the monarchy needs to be sort of preserved in aspect, or does it need to move with the times under the new king?
The monarchy under Her late Majesty moved with the times. I have absolutely no doubt that this genius for a sense of what needs to happen is deeply embedded in the whole royal family.
Archbishop Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy.
The Archbishop met mourners in Westminster, where he was joined by the leader of Britain's Roman Catholics, Cardinal Vincent Nichols. Clearly, you've had a lot of experience dealing with people who are grieving. We've seen a few sort of candid moments with the King, you know, a few outbursts. Is that characteristic of someone who is grieving, and also someone who's having to do that under pressure in public?
I think when we grieve, we're raw. And what's important in any grieving process, every family knows this, is that we have time. We have time to talk together. We have time to reminisce. We have time to tell stories. And we have time to be patient with those members of a family who've been angular and distant and difficult. And these moments are moments when we come together. And if there are little tensions around, that's almost inevitable. I can remember well when my father died, and there were 3 or 4 days in which people just came round to the house and we just sat and talked. There were 3 boys left. My mother had already died. People brought food. They knew our kind of uselessness in the kitchen, and they made sure, and that's what's happening here. We're making sure that people have time to be together, to talk together, to find the deeper emotions in them and express them.
So King Charles needs a bit of time out of the public eye.
I think he's done very well to go home to Highgrove today, to be on his own with the Queen Consort, and just have that space which all of us need. And in a way, this lying in state is giving us as a community a space now, between now and Monday, just to be quiet and to reflect and to allow the tremendous grief that there is to settle in our hearts.
Cardinal Nichols, thanks very much.
Thank you.